Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. And we are about to begin the 2047 playoffs. High expectations here for our Buffalo Wings. Had a 111 win regular season this year, and that ranks as the third highest total that we've had in team history. We won 112 in 2034 when we won our first World Series, and then we won 118 in 2040 when unfortunately we lost in the NLDS. So another year with the best record in baseball, another year with home field advantage for as long as we are in the playoffs. And hopefully we'll get the job done right this year after falling in the LCS last year 4-3. The team is a little worse on paper this year than last year, even though we won a couple more games. Last year we were first in the National League in runs scored and runs allowed. This year we slipped to second in runs scored, although it was still one of the most productive offensive seasons we've had in this playthrough. We were still first in the NL in runs allowed, and the glittering 3.11 ERA that we had this year is the best of the now 22-year history of the Buffalo Wings. So looking forward to the playoffs. Two things to talk about before we begin the playoffs. One is the playoff roster, and I'll be upfront about this. Alexis Barajas, our longtime ace, does not make the playoff and postseason roster, at least for this first season. Had thought about putting him on the team. He is the last player left who has been a member of all 5 of our World Series champions. And he still actually had a pretty good year this year, statistically, 14-7 with a 3.98 ERA. And he actually led the league in fewest walks per 9 innings for a second consecutive year. But you look at his ratings, and these are his ratings as a reliever. His stuff is actually only 45 as a starter, and his velocity has fallen into the 80s. Take a look at that scouting report, and since preseason, he has regressed pretty materially in terms of his stuff, his control, his movement, and the velocity on his pitches. Still has that pinpoint control, does not walk many batters. But when we take a look at his pitching splits, he's been pretty bad the last couple months of the season as his ratings have continued to deteriorate. 5.68 ERA in August and a devilish 6.66 ERA in the month of September. So it seems like the poor ratings are finally starting to catch up with him, given his incredible history with this team. Which includes a 207-95 record and a 3.29 ERA, Cy Young Award 11 years ago, and a perennial All-Star. Was tempted with my heart to put him on the playoff roster, but when I looked at the rest of the 12 people who are going to be on our pitching staff, it was just hard for me to come up with a rational person to remove from this roster instead of Barajas. If we have an injury, could we bring him up as our long reliever for another series? Certainly. But you look at how the rest of the pitching staff did, and Jim Coles, who's our number 4 starter, was the number 5 starter until the last month or two when we swapped him and Barajas. Still has 10-point better stuff than Barajas does as a starter at this point. He's going to give up some home runs potentially, but he also throws almost 10 miles an hour faster than Barajas. So felt like it made sense to keep him on the team. And then even looking at the relievers who, by and large, had extremely successful seasons, Joey Bills and Solano Totelli both still have stuff that's 10 or 15 points higher than what Barajas would bring to the table as a reliever. So made the difficult decision to leave Barajas off of the playoff roster, at least initially here. And when we think about Barajas' future with our team, he's likely unless we have some injuries, pitched his last game with us. We had signed him to a 4-year extension 3 years ago. We always try to be careful with the contracts, and we did include a team option for that final season, which we will likely decline. And given that we will likely be declining that option for $22 million, we have made another move, or we're trying to make another move. And we've offered an extension to our second baseman, Ramiro Medina, 5 years, $110 million. He was looking for a bit more than that. He was asking for 5 years, $120 million originally, so $24 million a year. We've offered him an average of $22 million a year, starting at $20 million a year, and then going up to $24 million in the 5th year when there is an option on the potential contract. Medina is just a really good player. He's above average offensively. He's above average on the base paths. He's got some good traits in the clubhouse. The fans love him, and he is a more than competent defensive infielder. Had another solid year for us this year. Hit only .268, which is better than a year ago, but down from where he was a couple years ago, and I believe probably a bit down from his career mark. Actually, it's up from his career mark, .259, but he had those kind of quieter years in Pittsburgh towards the start of his career before we traded for him. But does a little bit of everything: 34 doubles, 23 homers, 86 runs scored, 87 ribbies, stole 18 bases, all added up to a 111 WRC plus and a 3.7 WAR. And given that I believe our offense is a little bit more of a potential issue than our pitching going forward, wanted to keep a middle infielder with a pretty good bat around. And as I mentioned, we'll likely be using the savings from opting out of Barajas' contract to ensure that Medina does stay with us for the next several seasons. And since we did slim down the pitching staff to 12 from 13, given the days off built into the playoffs, we were able to add an extra player onto the 26-man roster. And we ended up keeping up Jim Weisenbach. Doesn't hit much, but he's got an incredible glove. He came up the last month of the season, and you can see only played in 6 games. Hopefully, our manager in close playoff games will be more thoughtful about using him as a defensive substitute. We've got him set up against both lefties and righties to come in and help us out there. So hopefully he can help clinch a couple of late games that are close. He's really the key addition. Other than that, no real surprises as far as the 14 players who are going to be on our playoff roster. Feel almost like our lineup against left-handers is stronger than our lineup against right-handers at this point. I don't know if that really fits with the team statistics for the season. It really doesn't. We won a 743 winning percentage against righties, 551 against lefties. But when I was building the lineups, I felt like the lineup against lefties was a little bit deeper. So although the numbers don't tell me that, it's also a different roster now than it was back in April. And I'm not going to be afraid to face off against some lefties here in the postseason. At this point, the question is just who we are going to be facing off against. Looking at the playoff tree, we are going to get a couple of storied franchises. Either the Dodgers or the Cardinals will be playing against us in that NLDS in a little less than a week. And we'll be facing off against the St. Louis Cardinals. Every wild card series was a sweep. They took out the Dodgers. The Nationals took out the Giants, so they will be facing the Padres. The Twins took out the White Sox and will be facing the Brew Crew. And Seattle took out the Guardians and will be facing the Kansas City Royals. So taking a look at our series against the Cardinals, with 111 wins, we were 21 games better than the 90-win Cardinals, who finished second in the National League West. Or are they? They're not in the East with us. Yeah, I've sometimes have a difficulty remembering since I went to the two large divisions here where where the teams are actually lined up. But the Cardinals are back in the West. Team that's been in the East, been in the West, been in the Central, but it is in the West in this world. We actually lost the season series to them, though, only a 3-game series, but they did beat us 2-1. But we have a better offense. They ranked 6th in the National League in runs scored, so we scored 123 more runs than them this season. And they were 4th in the National League in runs against, so it looks like we allowed 89 fewer runs than them this year. So certainly on paper, we would be the favorites. We've got our new ace, Nehemiah Vidale, big free agent signing from last year on the mound for us. Howie Frazier on the mound for St. Louis, and this 24-year-old looks like a potentially great pitcher. 14-9 with a 3.26 ERA, only 24 years old, and he's already got 3 200 strikeout seasons in the major leagues. Led the league in strikeouts per 9 innings a year ago. Captain personality. Not a bad return at all for the 13th pick in the draft just 3.5 years ago out of Newberry College. So we will be facing a lefty. Be careful what I wish for, because we just might get it. We will see how game 1 goes. Both of our series last year, we lost the first game in Buffalo. We ended up recovering to win the DS, but as I mentioned, we fell in the NLCS a year ago. Hopefully we can get this series off to a good start with a couple of wins in Buffalo. And we do get a 6-2 win. Floyd Auclair with the win in relief. Cardenas with the loss. McClintock with a save. Jim Reichert with a home run for us. We scored a run in the second. They came back with 2 in the third, tied it in the 5th on a run-scoring double from Juan Palomo, and then blew it open in the 7th with 4 runs, a run-scoring double from Casares and a run-scoring double from Mr. Aguayo Leal. Not a ton of offense, only 6 hits for us, 2 of which came from Palomo, but the left-handed hitting the lineup against left-handed pitching, more accurately, got the job done. Quality start from Vidale, 5 hits, no walks, 9 strikeouts, 2 earned runs over 6. Claire and McClintock combined for 3 innings of scoreless relief. Vidale, not surprisingly, named the player of the game. Frazier did a nice job for them, but he didn't strike out a lot of batters and walked 7 in 6 innings, only allowed 2 hits. So although we only had the 6 hits on the day, we did walk 9 times, so that certainly helped. So good start to the series for Buffalo. Hopefully we can win game number 2 and head to St. Louis up 2-0 in the series. And looks like our buddy Ramiro Medina signed. So that's good news. Fans are excited about it, and we will have him locked up for the future. And unfortunately, that does likely mean that we will be moving on from Barajas, but we can't pay him $22 million this year just based on his previous work for us. He's definitely not a $22 million pitcher anymore, so plan on opting out of that. But you can see here the summary of the 5 seasons that Medina has had in Buffalo for us, and over 20 home runs every year. So for a second baseman who can also steal some bases and play pretty solid defense, he's been not a core part of our offense right in the middle of the order, but certainly a very important batter that helps lengthen our lineup. Moving on and moving back to the series, we've got our former ace until we signed Mr. Vidale, Jim Lance, on the mound. 13-5 with a 3.28 ERA this year. Led the league with a 5.6 strikeout to walk ratio, so a bit of a bounce back year for him with a 5 WAR after facing some injury issues a year ago. And he will be going up against Jesus Rosa, a 25-year-old right-hander. Looks like the Cardinals have got some good young pitching, just like we do. 11-9 with a 3.82 ERA. Doesn't have the greatest stuff in the world, but really good control. Keeps the ball out of the stands. and should be another good pitching matchup here today. And it was a great pitching matchup, a 3-2 game, but Lance outpitches Rosa. McClintock with the save. We got a homer from Mr. Playoffs, the now 30-year-old center fielder Ishmael Velasco. And running the first, they tied it up in the fifth, and we added runs in the sixth on a single by the shortstop Fuchs. And then in the seventh, to take a 3-1 lead with a run-scoring triple by Morales. They did come back to get a run in the ninth, but too little too late. Take a 2-0 lead. Couple of hits from Habasham, Velasco, and Fuchs today, which is nice to see. Did bring on Weisenbach to play shortstop for us. Pivoted Fuchs over to second, so strengthened the defense as much as possible. Good to see our manager doing that. Lance, 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, 4 strikeouts, 1 earned run, so a second straight quality start for us. Claire and McClintock, once again, the only relievers that we used. McClintock did give up a home run for the lone run in the ninth inning to Trujillo. But we've got a 2-0 lead in the series, and now we will get a day off. Hopefully can set ourselves up. So get out of this series relatively quickly. Would love to get a sweep and have a few days to rest before beginning the National League Championship Series, but we still need one more win to make that happen. And we're going to have the youngster Danny Black on the mound for us. Last year he was 4th in the Cy Young Award voting and 3rd in the Rookie of the Year voting, leading the league with 18 wins. Not quite as sharp this year, a 14-7 record. His ERA up over a full point to 3.66. His whip was also up, but his Sierra was lower than a year ago, still put up a 3.3 WAR. Look at his profile and expect him to be a big-time pitcher for us for many years to come. He'll be going up against Chris Newell, another pretty well-established starter. Won a Cy Young Award in 2044, and he is the favorite to get a second Cy Young Award this year. 22-4 record, led the league in wins, ERA at 2.36, BABIP and WHIP put up a 6.1 WAR. So a tough matchup for us again, but we've got really good pitchers, and we're giving them tough pitching matchups as well. Hopefully the fact that we have a better offense will make the difference. And it does. A 4-0 win. Black out pitches Newell, and Black ends up getting the World Series MVP award, despite Juan Toledo hitting 2 home runs today, and our catcher Steve Banks knocking one out of the park too. So 2 in the first on a 2-run homer from Toledo, solo homer in the third from Banks, and then a solo homer in the fourth from Toledo. That accounts for all the offense, only 4 hits for each team. So 3 of our 4 hits were home runs. Looks like we limited the Cardinals to 2 singles and 2 doubles and only 2 walks, so not a lot of base runners in this game, and the solo home runs made the difference for us. Black, 4 hits, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts over 6 2/3, and Joey Bills comes on and gives us 2 1/3 innings of hitless relief, striking out 4 to send the Buffalo Wings to the National League Championship Series. Taking a look at the playoff trees here, the Nats and the Cardinals are knotted up at 1. The Brewers 2-0 up on the Twins, and the Cardinals and the Mariners are tied at 1 each. So we will be getting more rest than anybody, which we like to see. And we are back in the National League Championship Series for a 7th consecutive season, and we've got what on paper is the best matchup possible, because 3 of the favorites won. The Brewers took out the Twins, the Royals took out the Mariners, and we took out the Cardinals. But our divisional foe, the wild card Washington Nationals, took out the NL West winning San Diego Padres in the NLDS. So we're going to get a team that we are very familiar with here in the National League Championship Series. National League playoffs have not been that exciting so far. The teams that have won the series have 10-1 record. So other than the one game that the Padres managed to take off in the Nationals, it's been all sweeps in the National League playoffs this year. Taking a look, as I mentioned, the Nationals finished second to us in the division. They did have, I believe, the third best record in baseball behind only us and the Padres. Yeah, so they're still a formidable foe, but one that we are very familiar with at this point. We were 8-4 against Washington this year, but they did have a better offense than us. The only team in the National League that outscored us with 878 runs scored. We do have a materially better pitching staff, though, as we allowed 131 fewer runs than the Nationals did this year. We're well set up with the time off to go back to our number one and our number two starters. So we have the ace, Nehemiah Vidale, who pitched well in the Game 1 victory on the mound for us. Jesus Ramirez, a 28-year-old, 18-7 with a 3.92 ERA. Very good pitcher, right-hander for the Nationals. So another good pitching matchup here. Hopefully the home field advantage and the experience that these Buffalo Wings have in the playoffs will pay off for us. And we do get a 6-2 victory in Game 1. Vidale takes the W. Ramirez takes the L. McClintock with the save. We got home runs from Reichert and Toledo, so a couple of the young players. They scored a run in the second. We came back with two. Ferguson with a run-scoring double, and then we added two more in the fourth, a run-scoring single from Banks. Two more for us in the fifth to provide the final margin after they scored a run in the top of the fifth. Couple of hits from Habisham, Toledo, and Ferguson today, as well as Banks. The newly re-signed Ramiro Medina, the only guy who went hitless for us. So pretty solid offense today with 11 hits for the Buffalo Wings. Ramirez, a bit of a rough outing for him. 9 hits, 6 runs, 3 of them earned over 4 1/3 innings. Vidale was outstanding, 4 hits and 1 walk and 8 strikeouts over 8 2/3. Guyer came on and walked a batter, and with that putting on the that wouldn't have been well, we ended up with a save situation. Don't know if there was another runner on base there or not, but McClintock threw 2 pitches to pick up his third save of the playoffs, and we are on to game number 2 with a 1-0 lead, similar to that series against the Cardinals. Would love to ensure that we have a 2-0 lead when we head on the road and south to Washington. We've got Lance on the mound. They have Luis Miranda, 33-year-old right-hander, 14-8 with a 3.99 ERA. On paper, does not look quite as intimidating as some of the pitchers we've faced in the playoffs this year. Average movement, fly ball tendencies. Only gave up 18 homers this year, but 27 in just 132 and 2/3 innings a year ago. So feel like there's definitely potential for us to hopefully hit a few balls out of the ballpark against Miranda. And we get a 6-4 win, and we do get 3 homers, a couple from Medina after I pointed out that he had no hits yesterday, as well as Toledo hitting a homer for the second straight game. So going well for us. We took a 5-0 lead actually into the top of the 7th, and then they came back with 4 runs in the 7th off of Lance. I assume that ended up chasing him, but we added a run in the 7th, and then the bullpen stabilized things there. Medina, in addition to the 2 home runs, added another hit, so 3 for 4, 2 runs scored, and 4 ribbies. He was the big help on offense. Weisenbach, again, coming in as a defensive substitute. Fuchs pivoting over to second base. So the defensive switches working out for us. Lance, 4 hits, 3 earned runs, 5 hits over 6 2/3 innings, so it was a quality start. Claire looks like may have given up a big hit to help encourage that big 7th inning that they had, where all 3 runs were scored off Lance plus the 1 off of a Claire. But still gets the save for us with 2 1/3 innings of relief. Keeps the rest of the bullpen from having to work, which is good, although we've got a day off tomorrow anyways. And we'll be heading to Washington in the position that we want with a 2-0 lead. So thus far, our Buffalo Wings have been pretty good in the playoffs. The pitching has been outstanding. The offense hasn't been explosive, but we have been hitting enough home runs to win some relatively close games. And we are now headed to game number 3 in this NLCS. We've got Danny Black back on the mound. Kimani Madjun on the mound for the Nationals. The 35-year-old is a left-hander, 11-4 with a 4.17 ERA. A good, solid pitcher, but someone that you would think we should be able to score some runs off of. And we do score some runs off of him. A 12-4 victory. Only 2 homers from Ramirez and Aguayo Leal, but Black with the W, Majin with the loss, and we are up 3-0. 2 in the first, 2 in the second, 3 in the fourth to really blow things open. 12-4 victory, ended up with 17 hits. Everyone except Casares hit hits for us, and a lot of big days. 3 for 4 with 2 runs scored from Riker, 4 for 5 from Romero, 3 for 5 from Ferguson with a couple runs scored and 3 ribbies, and the catcher Ramirez 2 for 4, 2 runs scored, 3 ribbies. Black, not a vintage outing, 7 hits and 3 runs over 5 2/3, but gets his second W of the playoffs. And then Claire once again gives up a run in relief. Bills came on for 2 innings of scoreless relief to close things out. But a 3-0 win for the Buffalo Wings today, and we are now on the verge of making it into the World Series. Jim Coles will be pitching his first game for us. Ended up being our number 4 starter, with the fact that Barajas is not on the playoff roster. Coles 13-8 with a 4.17 ERA this year. Definitely not as dominant as our other 3 starters, but we do like that he's got a nice 5-pitch arsenal of all above average pitches. Pretty effective, but he can, as we talked about earlier, give up the home run. And he'll be going up against Jim Aldrich, 36-year-old right-hander, split the year between the Braves and the Nationals. 3-3 with a 6.75 ERA for the Nationals. A solid major league starter, but I would think that we're probably even favored in the pitching matchup here, even though Coles is our number 4 guy. Don't want to get greedy, but certainly would love to get the sweep today, so we're all set up to have our number 1 and number 2 starters going in game 1 and 2 of the World Series. And we do get the sweep. Looks like Chad Aguirre, unfortunately, has a sore shoulder, so that could leave us with a decision to make. Fortunately, we do have some time to figure that out before the World Series will start. But a 5-3 victory. McClintock, our closer, gets the W in relief. Aguirre with the save, so I'm guessing it might have been an extra inning game. Juan Toledo with his 3rd homer of the series, but the recently signed Ramiro Medina wins the NLCS Most Valuable Player Award. Ended up being an 11-inning game. We were actually down 3-2 heading into the 9th. Scored a run with a run-scoring single from Juan Romero. And then in the top of the 11th, a 2-run double from Juan Palomo. So 2 consecutive sweeps for the Buffalo Wings. We're 7-0 in the playoffs this year. Medina with a couple of hits today, Toledo with a couple of hits, Habasham with 2 hits as well, and Palomo with a big hit there in the late innings after Weisenbach, the starting, Fuchs, the starting shortstop, was pinch hit for Weisenbach. The excellent defensive shortstop came in and then was pinch hit for. Palomo took over at short and ended up delivering that huge series clinching double, although we still had to get 3 outs after that. Coles, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts over 6 innings, so a quality start from him. Claire with 2 perfect innings, 4 strikeouts, nice to see. McClintock, 2 hits, scoreless, 2 innings for him. And then Aguirre comes on, I believe his first playoff action of the year, to get the save. Unfortunately, we noted he was injured, so we'll continue to monitor that situation over the next few days. The Brewers have a 2-0 lead on the Royals, so at this point, our hope is that perhaps the Royals in the ALCS, I'm assuming the next 3 games are in Kansas City. Would love to see the Royals turn this into a long series and give us as much rest time as possible before we need to decide on our World Series roster. And in the meantime, we're also going to take a little look offline at some of the international amateur free agents that we'll be looking to consider adding to our team in January. And taking a look at Aguirre, sore shoulder, think it's going to impact him for about a week. He led the National League with 78 games pitched this year, 2.10 ERA and 112 strikeouts over 85 and 2/3 innings. So for the 3rd-round pick, he has become a big-time left-handed arm out of our bullpen. Certainly would hope that he heals up a little faster than expected. We probably got 3 or 4 days now till the start of the World Series. So if it's a situation where maybe he recovers in quicker than a week, we may only have him on the shelf for the first game or 2 of the World Series. If that's the situation that we find ourselves in a few days, it's very possible we'll just keep him on the roster and then hopefully have him healthy and well for games 3 through potentially 7. And we're 1 game away from the dream scenario as far as rest for our team and Aguirre hopefully recovering from that injury. The Royals did storm back to take all 3 games at home, so just need a win from a Brewers now, and that'll make it a 7-game ALCS, and will give us the best chance possible to make the decision on Aguirre, and hopefully that decision will be that even if he needs to miss a game or 2, we'll keep him on the roster. Although it would be kind of fitting if we brought Barajas up and he ended up pitching some real significant innings for us on the way to a World Series title, but not going to tempt fate unless necessary. And unfortunately, we'll be facing a hot Royals team who have won 4 in a row at this point. They ended up winning Game 6 in Milwaukee. So the World Series starting in a couple of days. We'll check in on what Mr. Aguirre's injury looks like right now. And he's only expected to be out another 2 days. So assuming we think he's healthy and well by the time we get to the first game of the series, probably not going to make a change there. Looks like he was a relatively quick healer, and we're not going to have to make a move. A little worried that maybe that's something else that will flare up, but we'll gamble and take our chances. It's possible I might actually even just manually put in to not pitch him in Game 1 of the series just to give him an extra day of rest. But glad that we will have Aguirre for the World Series, because we are basically going to be running with everyone that we want as we try to win a 3rd World Series title in 4 seasons. And as luck would have it, we happened to get a new scouting report today on Chad Aguirre, getting ready for the first day of the World Series. Says he's 100% rested, no real changes to his scouting report looks just as good as he always does, so I don't even think we're going to put any restrictions on him. We've got the team set up just the way that we want. The Royals, an 88-win team, so we were 23 games better than Kansas City this year. They did take the season series against us, though. They took 2 out of 3 the one time we played them, and they were the American League West champions with those 88 wins. That said, they rank 8th in the AL in runs scored, 6th in the AL in runs against, so pretty much middle of the pack hitting team, slightly above average in terms of pitching. I would think that on paper we are big favorites to, as I mentioned, claim a 3rd title in 4 years and a 6th title overall in Buffalo, but we still need to go out and win 4 more games to make that happen. Nehemiah Vidale, the left-handed ace on the mound for us. Sam Redcross on the mound for the Royals, and a very interesting pitching profile here. Not the type of guy that I would probably ever draft. Just a stark profile, an incredible changeup, slider, and fastball. His stuff is off the charts. His control is off the charts. But his movement on the pitches is brutal. Gives up a lot of home runs with those extreme fly ball tendencies, over 30 homers a year for 3 straight years, but he has also led the league in strikeout to walk ratio 3 straight years, led the league in whip 2 out of those 3 seasons, 14-6 record, 3.22 ERA with 258 strikeouts. So an excellent pitcher, just a very extreme pitching profile for the 35-year-old. We'll see if we can get this series off to the same start that we had in the divisional series in the LCS with a couple of wins at home. And the only way to make that happen is to win game 1 today. And unfortunately, that's not the case. A 6-4 loss for us. Looks like McClintock took the loss in relief, so that's not good to see. We did get homers from Ferguson and Ramirez, but taking a look at the box score, we were down 3-0 early, 4-1 in the 3rd inning. We chipped back with a run in the 7th and then 2 in the 9th to put it into extra innings. But a 2-run home run from Pat Moody, who is a big-time player, off of our closer, Chris McClintock, in the top of the 9th, or the top of the 11th. And we are down in the series. That was the only hit of the day for Moody, who hit .295 with 35 homers and 110 ribbies this year. 4 hits from Habersham, 3 hits from Ramirez, the number 1 hitter and the number 9 hitter, and only 3 hits over 11 innings from the rest of the batting order. So that was not the way that we drew things up. Vidale, not great. 5 hits, 4 earned runs over 6 innings, did strike out 10. Claire and Aguirre gave us 3 perfect innings of relief before turning it over to McClintock. 1 hit, 1 walk, but 2 earned runs over those 2 innings with the big home run that he allowed to Moody. So after storming through the National League playoffs and getting a lot of rest, we find ourselves in a difficult situation where going to really feel like we need to get victory here in Game 2 against the surging Royals. Definitely don't want to be going on the road down 2-0. Julio Mata, 30-year-old right-hander, 14-8 with a 4.14 ERA this year, struck out 228 batters. We've got Lance on the mound, and it's going to be time for our longtime ace, who's now our number 2 starter behind Vidale, to come through here in Game 2. And we do get a 4-0 win. Lance presumably was excellent. Mata took the loss. Only 1 hit for the Royals, so Lance was definitely electric today. We got runs in the 2nd on a Medina single, Velasco with a double in the 3rd, and then Casares with a single in the 3rd, added an insurance run in the 8th. But a 4-0 win, brilliant performance from Lance. 3 hits from Casares, 2 from Velasco and Medina. Would be nice if Reichert and Toledo find their bats in the games in Kansas City. Can't complain too much about Toledo with 5 hits, 5 homers, and a 280 average. But Riker hitting just a $194 in the playoffs. Time for him to start coming on. Lance with a brilliant outing, a rare in 2024 or 2047 baseball, complete game, 1 hit over 9 innings, 1 walk allowed, 5 strikeouts. Lance, after a somewhat difficult performance in the playoffs last year when he was 1-3 in the 2 series that we played, is now 3-0 in 3 games pitched in the 2047 playoffs. Kansas City has wrestled home field advantage away from us, but we're still better off heading there 1-1 than down 2-0. And the goal now is to hopefully win 2 out of 3 in Kansas City, but at the very least we want to win 1 and send the series back to Buffalo, but certainly would prefer to be going back to Buffalo with a 3-2 lead, although honestly last year we were going back to Buffalo with a 3-2 lead in the NLCS and it didn't matter, but certainly want to win as many games as possible in KC and need to win at least 1 to ensure that we're playing again in Buffalo. Danny Black, the young right-hander on the mound for us today, going up against Jimmy Linton, left-hander. Average stuff, slightly below average movement, above average control, 10-15 with a 5.03 ERA this year. Fly ball pitcher. Kansas City, not necessarily a park where tons of home runs are going to be hit, but have to think that this pitching matchup favors us. Would love to take a 2-1 lead here today. And unfortunately, a lot of runs scored, and we are on the wrong side of a 10-8 score. Scott with the win, McClintock with his second loss of the series. That's brutal. McClintock this year had a 0.93 ERA in the regular season, and he's given up some runs here in the playoffs. Ramiro and Toledo with homers for us, Williams with a homer for KC. KC really jumped on us early. They had a 6-1 lead after 4. We came all the way back to take a 7-6 lead heading into the 7th inning stretch. They got 2 in the bottom of the 7th to take the lead back. We tied them again in the 8th, and then apparently that was all we could offer. We couldn't do any more after that. In the 9th, they scored 2 runs, 2-run homer from Williams off of McClintock. So after that brilliant regular season, McClintock has given up some big home runs here in the playoffs. 3 hits from Habisham, Toledo with a pinch hit, 3-run home run for us. Ramiro, a couple of hits, 4 runs scored, 2 ribbies. Ramirez, 2 for 3. He's been really good in these playoffs. Black had a rough outing, 6 hits, 2 walks, 6 runs, 4 earned over 3 innings. Bills, Aguirre, and Caper combined for 3 innings of scoreless relief to stabilize things after that. But then the big 2 out of our bullpen, Claire blew the save. McClintock came on for the loss. They combined to give up 4 earned runs over just 2 2/3 innings. So it was kind of the way we wrote it up with the 2 big pitchers in there for us at the end. But they didn't get the job done today, and we're now down 2-1. Juan Ramiro tied the NFL playoff game record with those 4 runs, but we needed 3 more to get the win, and we are now down 2-1, and that seemed like a pitching matchup that was one that we may regret if we don't end up coming back to win this series. We've got Coles on the mound, our number 4 starter, going up against Mike Corrigan, another left-hander, 14-12 with a 4.66 ERA. It's not a must-win by the legal and logical definition of the term, but feels like we're going to be really up against it if we can't get this game here today. Fortunately, we do bounce back for a 3-2 win. Coles outpitches Corrigan. McClintock stabilizes his performance with a save. Homers from Ferguson and Ramirez. Ramirez has been really good in these playoffs. He's only starting against left-handers, but he's been very effective in that role. Our old buddy Luis Comedoran with a home run against us. Mancias also homered for Kansas City. So they took a 1-0 lead in the fifth. The 2-run homer from Ferguson gave us the lead, extended it in the eighth with the solo homer from Ramirez. Comedoran cut the deficit to 3-2. But too little too late, even though they did have a double off of McClintock in the ninth. So it certainly was not a perfect performance, but we've guaranteed that we'll be at least playing in Buffalo. Only 4 hits for Buffalo, but we made the most out of them, especially with Ferguson and Ramirez at the bottom of the order with the home runs that they hit. Cole's very good. 6 hits, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts over 6 innings. Claire gave up a run in relief. Aguirre with the hold, although he walked 2. And then McClintock with an inning and a third save, although he did allow 2 hits. So we've evened things at 2. Don't want to be melodramatic about this, but with the series tied 2-2, tend to think that whoever wins this game 5 will probably end up winning the series. We've got our ace, Nehemiah Vidale, on the mound. Hopefully he can give us another really good performance in the playoffs, and hopefully it won't come down to our pen, because as great as our pen has been all this year, there have definitely been some problems that we've seen in the playoffs. Sam Redcross, another left-hander on the mound. He's the guy with the wacky pitching profile we faced in game number 1. Neither of those guys was involved in the decision, but this is a big one here. Game 5, final game of the year in Kansas City. And we do get the win 5-1, so we'll be taking a 3-2 lead home. Vidale outpitched Red Cross, got a homer from Palomo. They got a homer from Jeff Bowen. So similar to last year's NLCS, we're heading home with a 3-2 lead. Hopefully we get a better result than we did in the NLCS last year when we lost 2 games at home to miss making the World Series. Taking a look at the box score, scored a run in the first and then a 2-run homer, part of 3 runs in the fifth for us, added another run in the sixth. So had a 5-0 lead heading into the bottom of the 6th inning, and got a good enough performance from our bullpen for that to hold up. Couple of hits from Medina, Palomo, and Ramirez today, who's been brilliant facing all these lefties, particularly in the World Series. Vidale, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 9 strikeouts over 7 1/3 innings in what will likely be his final action of the season. Palencia came on, allowed 2 hits and a walk over inning and 2/3. I believe that's his first work of the playoffs. So with neither Auclair nor McClintock pitching here and a day off tomorrow, the bullpen should be fully rested for game number 6. The question is just how good that bullpen will be. As I said, there have been some problems with the bullpen from time to time in these playoffs, despite their brilliant performance in the regular season. But we've got confidence in the team. Jim Lance looking to cap off a excellent playoff run. Mentioned that he wasn't great a year ago, but being demoted to the number 2 starter and being healthy hopefully have worked in his favor. Going up against Julio Mata, right-handed starter. Excellent stuff, really good movement on his pitches. Had a solid year for Kansas City this year. This is the matchup that we had in a 4-0 victory in the last game at Solon Field. Can we clinch the World Series in 2047 today, or will we have to face a deciding game number 7? And the Buffalo Wings, with another excellent performance from Jim Lance, are your World Series champions in 2047. 3rd title in 4 years for the Buffalo Wings, and our 6th overall. Lance with the W, McClintock with the save. We've been talking about Ramirez, even though he was only starting against the left-handed pitchers. I think that was 4 starts in this series. And Juan Ramirez, who we conceivably could be moving on from at the end of this season. Monster playoffs. You can see a 193 hitter with 3 homers in the regular season, and he was much better than that in the playoffs. Scored 3 in the first, a run scoring single from Reichert and run scoring double from Toledo. Added a run in the second with a double from Velasco, and then held on after that. They scored a run in the 7th, but the Buffalo Wings, after an excellent regular season, are your World Series champions. Lance, 6 innings pitched, 6 hits, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts, runs his record to a perfect 4-0 in his 4 games started in the playoffs this year. And then Auclair and McClintock did give us 3 innings of scoreless relief. 3 hits allowed by Auclair, but he scattered them well enough to pick up his 3rd hold of the postseason. McClintock, with his 5th save, ended up with a 4.66 ERA, but we still have gotten the job done. And our Buffalo Wings are the 2047 World Series champions. We'll take a look at our MVP because, as I mentioned, it is possible that we'll be moving on from Juan Ramirez after this season. We started Banks more often this year, although it was a pure platoon, Banks against righties and Ramirez against lefties. But Ramirez looking to make over $8 million in arbitration, his final arbitration season, this coming off season. And for a guy who we definitely envision as our backup catcher, who's struggling to stay above the Mendoza line as a major league hitter, although he does draw a lot of walks. I think it's going to be hard for us to justify a guy who was below replacement level getting $8 million next year to be our backup catcher. That being said, we talked about 3 homers, 22 ribbies, and a 193 average and a 63 WRC plus below replacement level in the regular season. The postseason this year, he was 10 for 20, 3 homers and 6 ribbies. So in 6 games played, 4 of which were in the World Series, he had 3 home runs, which was as many as he had in the entire regular season this year. Ridiculous 324 WRC plus, and almost a win above replacement in just 6 games. So a well-earned World Series MVP award for Juan Ramirez. And you may note that means for the first time in the 4 World Series that he has been a part of, Ishmael Velasco, for the first time ever, is not the World Series MVP. He's been the World Series MVP of our previous 3 World Series championships. This year he was still very good in the playoffs. Hit 323, homer, 6 ribbies in 31 at-bats, 133 WRC plus. So he was very good, but not a World Series most valuable player this year. And our Buffalo Wings, as we mentioned, the 2047 World Series champions, ended up 11-2 in the playoffs, won the last 3 after falling behind 2-1 to the Royals in the World Series. So after a disappointing year last year when we felt like we clearly had the best team in baseball and we ended up not even making it to the World Series, we now have our third World Series in the past 4 years, 4th World Series in the past 7 years, all of which we've made at the very least the National League Championship Series, and our 6th World Series title overall as we complete our 20th consecutive year in the playoffs. So a nice season for Buffalo here, and it's time to start thinking about the offseason. And a nice score of 1255 for us this year. And you can see Mr. Barajas still does get a 6th championship. So he's now 1 ahead of Seifu. And the only player who's been a member of all 6 of our World Series championship teams, even though we'll likely be moving on from him at the end of this season. And Since it is the end of the season now, big decision there. We've got an option year decision on Chris McClintock to make, the option year decision on Barajas that we are likely to reject. Chris Ames, the owner, bumps our budget a little bit to $258 million, so that's the benefit of a long playoff run. Looks like we're going to be replacing some coaches. Bench coach Sergio Santos, I believe we just hired him this past year. So he's going out with 1 year and a World Series championship. And manager Ronnie Labrie, not a long run for him either in the manager seat, but hey, if you can go out on top, that's the way to go. Quite honestly, if I hadn't promised viewers another 3 seasons to play through and to find out whether Deshaun Seifu is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, this is really kind of would be a great way to go out with a 3rd title in 4 years, with OOTP 25 being just 5 days away at this point for Steam users such as myself. I know that some of you who are going to take the beta version and buy it from a source other than Steam, you're going to have the game in just 2 days, and I'm a little jealous of that, but I'll be working during the week anyways until I take Friday off to play computer baseball. But it would be kind of, if I hadn't promised those other 3 seasons with the game in the new version just 5 days away, this would be a great opportunity to go on top, feeling really good about the team that we've put together. But we've got another 3 seasons to go, another 3 seasons at least of Buffalo Wings action, and really appreciate the loyal viewers who have kept this series interesting to me for over 200, closing in on 260 episodes, over 250 episodes. We'll probably be closer to 300 than 250 by the time this is all done in a few weeks. So it's been a really fun journey that we've been on, and that journey is going to continue in the off season because, as I mentioned, we've got some big decisions to make. Likely we'll bring McClintock back. Likely will not be bringing Barajas back. Juan Ramiro, who had been with us for several years, was one of our top home run hitters in the history of this franchise, came back before the trade deadline and had some big hits for us in the playoffs. Coles, Kashuk, Ramirez, Habersham, and Langley are all arbitration eligible. Probably will be moving on from Langley. We may be moving on from Ramirez, may see what kind of trade value he has. Coles and Kashuk probably will be back. Habersham probably will be back too. I know he's kind of our 5th outfielder in terms of talent, but when you have a 5th outfielder who leads the league in at-bats and hits, and both of those figures, the 674 at-bats and the 214 hits, our team records, moving Deshaun Seifu out of the best single season at-bat and hit totals in franchise history. And he also hit .318 with 40 steals. As a guy who's probably the 5th most talented outfielder on our team, I think spending 3.5 high 3s on him next year is a perfectly reasonable decision for us to make. You can see he's listed as a first baseman right now. We actually did, I didn't talk about this at the top of the episode, but given that Habersham is better defensively at first base than Reichert for the playoffs, we actually moved Habersham to first base. He's our right fielder against left-handed pitching, but Reichert was just a pure designated hitter for us in the playoffs this year. He'll probably be back in that first base role for the regular season next year, but wanted to do everything possible to try to maximize our chances of winning. And when all was said and done, we think we did that. We had the best record in baseball, won the World Series, and delivered a nice, tidy profit to our owner, who, with his economizing personality and his profit priority, does care about those things. So a job well done for the Buffalo Wings here in 2047. We'll be back to do our annual player review and annual planning session for the off season in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.